Hello, everybody. Good morning. This is Jordan Tremaine, and welcome to the Perspective Podcast, where we explore new thoughts, connect ideas, and offer perspectives that may change the way you think about a thing or two. And today, we're talking about sensationalism. Okay, so this topic I think is very relevant in, today's society, at least in the United States. And I think it's going to become more relevant as I explain it more if you're not too familiar with the term sensationalism. But we're going to define it. We're going to get a little bit into the reason that I want to talk about it today. But yeah, I think this has been on my mind for a while, and it's not something I always totally understood as to why it is such kind of like a big topic in society, and why it's like so important, I guess, in certain spheres. But I understand that it is very important, and that I think being aware of it and understanding that there is a healthy way and an unhealthy way, in my opinion, to deal with this topic, I think might help some people. So without further ado, let's get into it. So definition-wise, establish a baseline so I don't get too out in space. Sensationalism is a noun, and there's two definitions. And the first one is, especially in journalism, the use of exciting or shocking stories or language at the expense of accuracy in order to provoke public interest or excitement. And the second definition is from philosophy, and it is another term for phenomenalism, and I didn't even know what that word meant, so I looked that word up, and phenomenalism is a noun, and it means the doctrine that human knowledge is confined to or founded on the realities or appearances presented to the senses, which is kind of a mouthful, and it's very kind of like textbooky, as definitions tend to be. But basically, I think sensationalism is producing content. It says especially in journalism, but I'm going to talk a lot about social media today because I think this definition was made back when social media wasn't that prevalent. But I think social media, in a way, is kind of a form of journalism, even though most people don't work for a paper. But it's like you put out exciting or shocking stories or provocative language to get people to look. And provoke public interest and excitement. And then the idea of phenomenalism, which is the philosophical equivalent of sensationalism, is this idea that everything that we know as humans is based on what we perceive with our senses. And so like sight, touch, smell, taste, hearing, and so I guess what can excite the senses the most is what we know the most about, and I guess that's kind of how it plays into sensationalism. In terms of etymology or history, I was surprised to see that there wasn't too much about this. The only thing I could find was this very vague reference, and I admit I didn't look too hard, but I looked at like 5 or 6 sources. But it says, in 1846, philosophy, whatever, I don't even know what philosophy or who said it, but the etymology is, it is the theory that sensation is the only source of knowledge, which kind of folds back into phenomenalism. Maybe if I looked in there, I'd find some more meat on the bones, but I didn't. But basically, sensationalism is like being very fantastic and, like, I guess, drawing attention by saying fantastic things. And I think the part of it that was very interesting to me, which I'm going to hone in on today, is that little part of the first definition where it says the use of exciting or shocking stories or language at the expense of accuracy in order to provoke the public interest or excitement. And that part where you say shocking or extreme things and the shock value is more important than the accuracy of the content, and the whole point of this is to provoke the public or provoke their excitement, to provoke interest or excitement. And so I think that it may already be coming out what I'm going to be talking about, but this idea that it's not always important to say the truth or say things that are accurate, sometimes it can become advantageous in cases for certain people to just say things that are exciting or, in my mind, say things that will get likes or get views or subscriptions and things like that. And so I think this can become an interesting game to play when you're talking about the news or when you're talking about the way people project themselves online with their avatars and their profiles and stuff, where is the truth or the reality of this person or the story even relevant, or is the thing that is important that people look at it and that people are excited by it and that people are interested in it? And if it's not interesting but it is true, does it have any value? Personally, I think yes. I think the truth is very valuable, even though it's not always the most attractive thing. A lot of times, especially recently in my life, the truth has been not fun to hear, but it is, I think, important, and it is the thing that is true, which I tell myself I'm interested in, but there's a lot of times when I face the truth and I'm like, ugh, I don't know, but I try to keep that interest in the truth going strong every day. So, in terms of sensationalism, I think applying that to social media, I'm going to be talking particularly, I think, a lot about profiles and like people's online presence. I think this idea is kind of like people projecting an image or creating a desired version, an internet version, an avatar of themselves, or this sensationalized version of themselves, and putting it on social media, putting it on the internet, or showing it to the world. And it's this, not necessarily your struggles or your challenges or your imperfections, it's your vacations and it's your promotions and it's your good makeup days. And I'm not saying those things don't exist. And I'm not saying people aren't really pretty, people aren't really successful, people really aren't happy. But to project an image that only really speaks to what you consider the positive aspects of your life, I think does some interesting things to yourself over time and also to the viewers of this image over time. Where I think there can tend to be a split that is very substantial between the true image, which I would say is the reality of you. And I'm not saying you should put all your business on the internet. I'm not saying that. Please don't do that. But the truth of you, which is the everyday you, and sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down, sometimes you're happy, sometimes you're sad, versus this idealized, sensationalized version of you where you're always like, what do they say, on point, or, to the nines and all that kind of stuff. So the thing that I think that is interesting about this is, in my experience, typically sensationalized images of people or projections or profiles of people in the internet space or in the public space are consistently sensationalized. And every once in a while, I think there's like an op-ed or like a kind of quirky post to kind of say, hey, I'm a real person, I make mistakes too. But the vast majority, I think, of posts in sensationalized profiles or content is consistently sensational. And that's what I wanted to kind of talk about, where I think there are some risks of consistent sensationalism. And I just wanted to bring that up as a concept, not necessarily to like shame finger people about putting their best foot forward. I think, we should all share a picture of us when we look nice, but more to warn people of what I would call potential dangers, or what I see as potential risks of only publicly showing you when you look great. Which, I mean, on the resume, on paper, that sounds awesome, because then everybody thinks you're dope and more people want to hang out with you. You get more interviews and you get your dream job and you get your like nice spouse with like big old house and all that kind of stuff. It sounds really great. But I think subscribing to 100% or very near to 100% sensationalism is risky or dangerous for a few reasons. And I will note three, because that's the minimum for the word few. Um, and these are in no particular order. But firstly, I think if you put out an image of an ideal you in whatever sphere, it promotes this image as reality. It tells this story that this is you, this is the end. And I think there's a lot of cases where society holds this idea that that's not the real you, and I'm going to pretend this is the real you because this is the one you're putting out, but I know that's not the real you. But over time, as we see these images more and more and more and more, even if we know that it's not the full thing, we can start treating people like it is the full thing, or start treating ourselves in comparison to these images as if they are the real thing, even if we know for a fact that this is not the total reality. So I think the promotion of this image or this sensationalized version of a person as reality, I think, is risky because it can distort the way we perceive things. And in that, number two, I would say it can pressure individuals to see themselves or others through sensationalism. So if, I don't know, there's some guy named Mac, and Mac is like always posting all this like great stuff on social media, and it looks really great, and he looks very successful and very, like, sexy and all this stuff. And I think over time, if you see enough of that content, especially from a lot of people, I think if a lot of people are posting sensationalized content, and at a certain point in your life, which I think everybody comes to this, your life is in reality not that great, it can cause you, I think you run a good chance of running a comparison and treating what you see as, oh, everybody else is having a good time, oh, everybody else is getting married, oh, everybody else is having kids, oh, that looks so great, and then I wish I had that. Or the opposite, where you're putting out this sensationalized image of yourself as, like, super mom, or the Instagram model, or like super successful engineer or something like that. And you can start, it's kind of weird, but you can start like self-pressuring into keeping up this image, because this is me, this is who I'm projecting, so I have to give more content, I have to take more pictures that promote this desired image. And that can become destructive, because then you're not necessarily living life to enjoy it, but you're living life to promote an image of a life that doesn't exist. And that can become very exhausting. So there's a one side where you're seeing everybody do it, and it's pressuring you to think like, man, I wish I had all this stuff, and be all, I wouldn't say jealous, but like longing and comparing and making yourself feel bad. And then there's the other side where you're putting out all this content, and maybe your life is dope, and you're like taking all these super great pictures and stuff, and that's awesome. I hope your life is actually as sensational as you project into reality. But I would say that in my experience, I have seen a good amount of cases where what I see online does not 100% match what I see in reality. And not that the happy things online don't happen, but the online presence does not, it omits a lot of the sadness, it omits a lot of the hardship, it omits a lot of the, what I would call the reality of living, because living is hard. And I think by saying that and by accepting that as a person, as a society, it helps us be healthier and help take care of each other, and not ignore problems because we're so focused on trying to promote these images or these projections of ourselves. So there's that. That was number two. And then number three, and I think these all kind of tie into each other, but subscribing to 100% sensationalism, or very near 100% sensationalism, and I know it can get tricky, because there's sometimes where it seems like people are trying to be real, whatever that means, by saying like, oh, I went through this hardship and I was able to overcome it and blah 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 blah, that kind of stuff, where I ended up graduating college even though I got my leg amputated or something like that. Um, but I still feel that's sensationalized if it's a testimonial, because we never talked about it, we never showed it as it was happening, and as it seemed hopeless, we only showed it once it became a good story. And if that's true, I still think that's sensationalism. But it can seem like you're adding like, oh, this person is a real person. They have struggles too. But you only cast the struggles in like this blinding light on stage that's all glittered and glammed up to say like, oh, it made me who I am and now I'm great. And that's not always the case. Sometimes something happens to you and it hurts, and it helped you to not reach your potential, or is the reason you didn't end up finishing college, and that's okay. I know, at least in my life, there's plenty of things that happened that I wish I would have done differently, maybe, or I think about and I'm like, that didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. But that's life, and I think if we share that kind of stuff a lot, it helps us to really come to terms with it, accept it, learn that other people go through it, and like grow as a society. Okay. And the third thing, when subscribing 100% or very close to that, to sensationalism, that is dangerous, is when you subscribe to sensationalism in a large sense, it can turn into a cover for the non-sensational reality, or it can tend to ignore the other parts of the story that you're not telling, to the point where it covers over them and doesn't let them to the light and makes it so it, as far as you're concerned, doesn't exist. These non-sensational parts of reality I call the mundane or the challenging, where it's the moments where you get depressed, the moments where you didn't get the job that you wanted, the moment where you studied for the test and you failed. And those parts are very important. And to me, especially when I am facing challenges in my life, one of the things that I think is key to helping me get through challenges in my life is understanding that my challenge is not unique, which is one of the reasons I like history. James Baldwin said something really that stuck with me, where he said that when he faced challenges, he read history, and understanding that other people went through struggles just like his made him feel less alone. And I think that's very true. It makes you feel less special. It makes you feel less like what you're doing nobody understands. And it's like, okay, well, other people have gone through things like this or worse. And by sharing those things, it takes a lot of courage to show your vulnerabilities. But I think it can be very important and very inspirational to other people, and it can help people tell their actual story and not just tell a very sensationalized version of their story. So that's the thing. I think we always want to put our best foot forward, and I want to make a good first impression. We have terms like that, but I think we can go a little overboard sometimes by creating these versions of ourselves, or these projections of ourselves that are so optimized or so perfect that they kind of ignore who we really are. And we can ourselves get confused with these images that we create, and we can confuse other people. And so I am making this episode of the podcast, the Perspective Podcast, about sensationalism, to kind of just put the idea out there in case it's something that is useful to you, or may help with your self-esteem, or may help with your ability to manage how social media interacts with your life, or how journalism interacts with your life. I would always say it may be harder, it may be more challenging, and it may take longer, but seeking the truth, I think, can often lead you to a good place. And this can be the truth in yourself, the truth in how others really are, the truth in what is really going on in the world, not necessarily what the news is saying or what journalists are saying. But there is a very heavy amount of sensationalism in our reality, and I'm not saying it's bad. I think it's cool to have great times and to tell people how great you are, but also being amenable or open to the reality of the ups and downs, the yin and yang, the black and the white in real life, I think is very important. So, some food for thought. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If this is something interesting to you, please share it with somebody. Please have a conversation. I'm not trying to do this to become a popular, like, influencer or something. I'm trying to do this to share ideas and get people to think about new things. So, I hope this is something that you find value in, and if you do, please share it. And I always welcome feedback. If you want to message me, you can go to Jordan Tremaine and hit up my Instagram, or you can review the podcast on iTunes, or find a way to get in touch with me. But hope you guys have a good day. I hope you, if you're not already, get in touch with the real you and not just the version of you that you want to be. I hope you are in touch with the real version of you and you accept yourself. I think that's a very important thing. But yeah, in the words of the great DJ Complexion, next week, best week. So I hope you guys have a good one. All right.